Renni, you crazy. You know that, right? Renni said, I don't know why y'all keep saying that. I take my medication. I was just trying to help. I mean, I may not be a toddler at McDonald's, but I stay dropping nuggets. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Poetic Justice, Part 15. When we left off, the ish had not stopped hitting the proverbial fan, giving life to the old adage that when it rains, it pours. Manny had begun to untangle a decades-long and deep web of deception of epic proportions. And the Queen Mother had told Idra that there was still yet more untangling to do. So the following morning, when Q entered his oldest son's bedroom with the intentions of enlisting his help with hacking into the hospital's security system and rolling back that beautiful bean footage to the day that True had visited Big Wood in the hospital, he was shocked, speechless, when his son checked him, and he checked him with his chest. Q said, "Son, I need you to do me a favor." And Michael looked up and said, "Wow, Pops, you really PTSO." Q said, "What does that mean? I don't speak teenager." Michael said, "Can I cuss?" Q said, "No, just break it down." Michael said, "You put that ish on. You look good, Pops." Q said, "Appreciate you. I do what I can." Now, back to what I was going to ask. Michael said, "You going somewhere special?" Q said, "I have a meeting, but I need your help before I head out." Michael said, "Oh, okay. Well, is that meeting about Uncle Wood?" Q said, "Yes and no." Like I was saying, Michael said, "Is whatever you're getting ready to ask me about Uncle Wood?" Q said, "Yes, it is. Can I ask it?" Michael said, "Don't even bother because the answer is no." Q said, "Excuse you?" Michael said, "I'm not jacking how you lied to me. That means I'm not going to be able to do it." Q said, "Young man." Michael said, "If you haven't noticed, Melissa and I aren't speaking to you. And so that you don't have to waste any more of your precious time, I'm going to tell you why. From the day that you and I first met, you didn't demand that I love you. You didn't even demand my respect. You demanded that I be honest with you. I have been, but you can't say the same. You might think because you're not the one who told us to lie, you sent mommy to do it, that should let you off the hook, but it doesn't. Because Melissa and I could tell from the look on her face that she believed the lie when she was telling it to us. So you lied to her so that she would lie to us. That's messed up. You ain't lied to me about Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny because you said you wanted me to trust you, but you let me believe that my uncle was dead, and now you want me to do you a favor." Q just stared. When he was finally able to pull himself together, he said, "How can I make this right, son?" When Q entered Melissa's room, she was packing. Q asked, "Where you going, baby girl?" Melissa said, "Back to school." Q asked, "Why?" Melissa said, "If you're in here, then you already know why." Q said, "You're angry, and I understand that." Melissa said, "Do you? You held a funeral for my uncle and expected for me to come. You wanted me to believe something that wasn't the truth. Didn't even notice that I was hurt." Q said, "Baby girl, you don't understand." Melissa said, "You're right, I don't." Q said, "It's complicated." And Melissa said, "What happened to the truth tells itself? Isn't that what you've always told me?" Q said, "Who is raising these kids?" Melissa said, "You are. And you raised us to tell the truth, even when it's hard, even when it's ugly." Q asked, "How can I make this right, baby girl?" Melissa said, "Take me to my Uncle Wood." Q said, "I can't do that right now, baby girl." And Melissa turned back around and started backpacking. When he'd asked Michael how he could make it right, Michael had told him that Melissa was leaving and going back to school. And if he wanted Michael to do him a favor, he needed to convince her to stay home by any means necessary. All Michael needed to know was that his Uncle Wood was alive and his father had a good reason for lying to everyone, but that he would not lie to him again. And with that answer in tow, and that promise secured, Michael had hacked into the hospital security footage, downloaded the video in question, saved it to the firm's server, backed out of the hospital security system, erased all trace that he'd ever been there, logged out of his computer, and headed downstairs to meet his Uncle D so that he could head to school. Before Q could even try to convince Melissa to stay home and at least wait until after the roundtable meeting to continue their discussion, Mom Brenda walked in the room. She said, "Melissa, you do not want to make the mistake of leaving your family ever, not even for one night, with anger in your heart. God does not promise us a tomorrow. You have a tremendous gift, and instead of allowing the knowledge that that gift has given you to give you peace in knowing that your Uncle Wood is not dead, you've allowed that knowledge to create bitterness in your heart. You know that your father is not alive." Melissa said, "But," Mom Brenda said, "if he were, he wouldn't have had a problem telling you the lie. Was he wrong for letting your mother tell it? Yes, he was. He was just as wrong as you were to let him think that you'd gotten off that yacht in Miami with your Uncle Donovan. Melissa said, but Aunt Maribel and Uncle Donovan were in danger. Mom Brenda said, and you don't think that the same way you were trying to protect your Aunt Maribel and your Uncle Donovan, your father was trying to protect some folks too? When Melissa got quiet, Mom Brenda looked at Q and said, you look like you have someplace you need to be. Q said, and you look like you got it. Mom Brenda said, I always got it. And if you know like I know, you'll get out of here while the getting is good. Q chuckled and said, thank you. Gave Mom Brenda a kiss on the forehead and headed out. When Q and Angela arrived at the round table meeting over at the Lopez estate, the Queen Mother said, good, let's go ahead and get started. As much as I love to get down and deep into the weeds, I have a personal emergency that I need to attend to, and I do not have all day. Manny, please give us the highlights and the go-forward plan. Let's get to the vote and adjourn this meeting. Then Manny provided the information that had been obtained and verified since the round table broke the previous day, overnight, and into the morning. He said both Mark and Stanley have pointed us to the handlers responsible for orchestrating Stanley's plan and the other members of the Charles family responsible for helping him execute it. Stephanie and Salima have spearheaded that effort and have dispatched teams that have expertly snatched the guilty parties, are treating them five family style, and obtained additional information to ensure that all involved parties will be dealt with, either by the five families or the FBI. While I can comfortably say that the crisis has been averted for the most part, I can't say we're out of the woods yet. The International Trafficking Organization has exposed some vulnerabilities within the five families. My suggestion is that we proceed to the vote for how we handle Stanley and the other members of our organizations who have been identified as part and parcel to his scheme. And we table discussions about how we clean up the trash in our rank and file. The Queen Mother said, fine, let's go. Angela said, not so fast. I have something that I need to add. The future of the five families is on the line, and I'd be remiss if I allowed this meeting to end without putting in my 2 cents. As you all know, I have been adamant about staying out of the family business, so I want nothing more than to get out of the family business. But in order for me to do that, I need to be comfortable and confident that future generations of these families aren't being set up for failure. I have 5 children and 2 on the way, who, whether I like it or not, are going to inherit the decisions that we make. And I can either spend the next 50 years of my life trying to keep my children, just about every other child in this family, on the right side of the law, or I can face the music. While I still and will always prefer that my children choose legitimate business for their futures, I know that the choice will be theirs. I'd much rather ensure that what they get to choose from is an accurate reflection of the tenets that you all say the five families are built on. In order to do that, some things are going to need to change. Stanley may have been behind the wheel, but a failure on you all's part provided him with the vehicle. And I say that with the utmost respect. Idris said, I wish I could say you were wrong, Angela, which is precisely why the Charles family is out. Angela said, I don't agree. And as I understand, that requires a vote. The Queen Mother said, it does. Angela said, good. One of the things that I know for sure is that the Charles family, with you at the head, Idra, has been very good at establishing and securing legitimate business endeavors to supplement and in addition to your illegitimate business endeavors. And all 4 of the other 5 families could certainly stand to take a page from your book. You remaining at the table will help them do that. Not only would that give our children more options, but it will also give them more security. And since it was your family at the head of the calamity and chaos, your family will be instrumental in cleaning it all up. I'd feel a whole lot better about my children and the children of the other members of this family choosing to participate in the family's businesses if I knew that the families were doing and had done all that they could, all in their power, to investigate, interview, and address every member and every organization who has or may have participated in activities like the ones exploited by the International Trafficking Organization, eliminated any vulnerabilities, and helped to make whole any women, children, or vulnerable individuals who may have been taken advantage of, violated, or abused by said members. We have a responsibility to ensure that our children are inheriting organizations that are living up to the principles of integrity, loyalty, and respectability that they claim to hold dear, regardless of whether the business practices are considered legal or not. We know that everything that's legal is immoral, and everything that's moral is not legal. If the organizations were established based on morality, they should look like it. We have the means, the talent, and the resources to root out any bad actors, make the changes that are necessary, realign and reorganize all 5 of these organizations so that our children are able to make decisions that they can live with, so that when it's time for them to take their rightful seats at this table, they can do so with pride and the solidarity that your fathers and mothers did, so that they don't suffer the same fate that Nigel did, that Selena did, or that Stanley is about to. Now, this might not be the time for us to outline how best we do that, but as a legitimate business owner, I have plenty of experience with the very solution that I'm proposing. And I wouldn't be Cheryl Spencer's daughter if I proposed a solution that I wasn't willing and able to stand by, or that I wasn't willing to spearhead. So before I walk away from this table and go back to my regular life, I'd like the opportunity to leave it better than I found it. Manny said, "You've got the job." Angela said, "Then I make a motion that the 5 families reject the Charles family's resignation." Idris said, "I object." Manny said, "Grounds?" Idris said, "On the grounds that I don't have a replacement." Angela said, "Now that's where you're wrong. When you and Queen Bella marry, her children will become your children, and her grandchildren will become your grandchildren." The Queen Mother said, "Marry?" Angela said, "I had a dream last night that Isla was your flower girl, and Melissa read the scripture at your wedding." The Queen Mother said, "Angela, this is inappropriate for the round table." Angela said, "I'm sure it is. But every single head in this room has a replacement. And by the time you 2 are actually ready to retire, your replacements will inherit a whole different Notorious 5. Manny said, "All in favor?" And everyone at the table said aye, except for Idra. Manny said, "The ayes have it." Angela said, "I also make a motion that the Charles and Baptiste families be responsible for spearheading the effort to increase the legitimate holdings of all of the Notorious 5 families." Manny said, "All in favor?" And the ayes were unanimous. Then Angela said, "With there being no other business, I make a motion that the head of the 5 families be responsible for handling the elimination of all parties involved in the crimes committed against the 5 families." Manny said, "All in favor." And the vote was unanimous. When the round table concluded, the Queen Mother and Angela left the Lopez estate. They needed to beat Donovan to the inpatient treatment facility, where he was scheduled to talk with the patients. In the back seat of the chauffeured car, the Queen Mother said, "I don't know what the hell you think you were doing back there, but my personal life and your dreams are not for public consumption, and they're damn sure not appropriate conversation for the round table." Angela said, "You're right, but your anger is displaced. You're nervous and afraid, and you need to be focused on what you plan to say to your son. You want to argue with somebody about whether you and Idra are going to get married? Take it up with God." Oh, at a safe house in Dallas, Texas, Stephanie had just finished verifying that everything that Stanley had told them thus far was the truth. Renni had used her truth serum to re-question Stanley, and with no other questions to ask and no more answers for him to possibly provide, Stanley's time was up. When Manny walked into the safe house, he was ready to do what he'd done countless times before. In the life of someone who threatened the safety and security of his family and the future of the Notorious 5 families. When he walked into the room, the tension was palpable. He looked at Stanley and said, "I wish that there was another way. I wish that I'd had an opportunity to know you as my son, to help you through your challenges and your differences. I wish that I'd been afforded an opportunity to be your father. But you've made decisions that tied my hands, and the vote was unanimous today. So like I've done countless times before, I'm going to do my job." Renni said, "See, that's the thing, though. As I understand it, the vote was that you would have to be responsible for handling him. The vote wasn't that you had to do it yourself." Manny said, "That's not really how this works, Renni." Renni said, "So the thing is, I'm not really good with following rules, so..." And then she pushed the plunger that was already inserted in an IV that was already attached to Stanley's arm. And before Manny knew what had happened, Stanley died. Renni said, "You're already a dangerous man. I don't know that you'd be a better man if I actually let you do what you came here to do. So you're going to have to be mad at me. And if I understand all of this stuff correct, it's nothing you could do about it. You're going to have to tell the Queen Mother. And she liked me a little bit. But I don't think she's going to let you do nothing to me. And since I know you really kind of feeling his mother still, I don't even think you want to tell her that you killed him. So just let it be on me. I got you. Manny just shook his head and walked out of the room. And Stephanie said, Renni, you crazy. You know that, right? Renni said, I don't know why y'all keep saying that. I take my medication. I was just trying to help. I mean, I may not be a toddler at McDonald's, but I stay dropping nuggets. Stephanie said, oh my God. Then she walked out of the room, while Renni verified that Stanley was in fact dead. Meanwhile, in New York, Zora had just woken up to the fire alarm going off in her mother and Samuel's house. When Lorenzo had arrived in New York late the night before, he headed straight there. And when Zora opened the door and saw him, she collapsed into his arms, crying. He held her in the living room on the couch until she cried herself to sleep. And he hadn't said a word, because he didn't know what to say. Her brother was gone. She'd attended his memorial service in Texas and immediately flown back home. Other than being with her, he had no idea how to support someone who just lost someone that they loved. So the next morning, he thought he tried to make her something to eat. Unfortunately, Lorenzo didn't know how to cook, so he damn near burnt the house down. Thankfully, he knew how to use a fire extinguisher. When Zora found him in the kitchen, he'd put the fire out. She said, what are you doing? Lorenzo said, I was trying to make you something to eat. Zora said, I appreciate it, but please don't burn my parents' house down. Lorenzo said, I'm sorry. Zora said, you being here is enough. I appreciate it. Lorenzo said, is it? Because we never talked about the things that Stanley said at the hospital. And Zora said, did I not make myself clear enough to Stanley? Lorenzo said, yeah, but you didn't really defend me. Zora said, I didn't think I needed to. Lorenzo said, but if you didn't have a problem with the way that I was showing up, then why didn't you say anything to him? Zora said, because the people who matter don't mind. And the people who mind, they don't matter. Lorenzo said, I get that, but Zora said, let me ask you a question. When you were a kid and you were somewhere with your mom or your dad and you did or didn't do something that other people had questions about, did your parents explain to them that you were on the spectrum and what your differences were? Lorenzo said, no. Zora said, do you know why they didn't explain? Lorenzo said, no. Zora said, when someone has questions about who you are or how you are, because they want to get to know you, they want to be in relationship with you, live in peace with you, they don't ask other people. They just take the time to get to know you. If they have a genuine question, they ask you. But what they don't do is they don't question it in the moment. They don't question it in public. They don't ask other people in front of you. They don't make already difficult situations more difficult. People who do that, people who ask those kinds of questions, they're trying to stand in judgment. They have an issue with what they've observed. They mind, so they don't matter. I love you, Lorenzo. I like who you are, and I will never defend who you are to make anyone else comfortable with who you are. I'll never explain who or how you are to combat someone else's judgment or opinion. I will tell them to drink water and mind their business. They don't need to understand. They don't need an explanation. If they can't respect you and accept you, then they don't need to be around you. And they don't need to be around me. You know who I do need around me, though? The man who left his family's dinner and got on a plane and came to New York to see if I was okay. The man who held me most of the night while I cried. Didn't try to make me stop. Didn't try to make everything be okay. Didn't try to feed me the party line about my brother being in a better place or convince me that because he was there, everything should just be okay. You may not know all the right things to say, but sometimes people don't want to hear someone saying all the right things, because sometimes all the right things are the wrong things. I love that you respect words, that you don't waste them or mince them. Every word I said to Stanley was the truth. I choose you for you. And then Lorenzo gave Zora a kiss that took her breath away.